Podcasting. Anyone ever thought about having a podcast? Where do I start? Where do I begin? Here's a tip for you, something that I use, Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. It is absolutely free, and they provide all the creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer, phone, tablet, whatever device you have. It is super convenient, and Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you. Your podcast can be on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Grow your listeners and get as many people as possible to listen to your podcast. Everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Let's do it.
Shows are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Welcome to the Edventures in Tech podcast, talking the latest tips and trends in educational technology to innovate and engage your students. Here are your hosts, Andrew and Dan.
Welcome to episode 17 of the Adventures in Tech podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew.
And I'm Dan.
And we are excited you are on this journey with us. As always, if you like the content, please help us out by providing feedback and a rating on wherever you download your podcast from. We greatly appreciate your support. Now, the one thing I want to say, Dan, before we get into what's going on in classrooms, is we are starting our new thing. So are you ready for my question this week?
Nope.
All right.
That's a negative, Ghost Rider.
Well, you wanted to, I think you said you wanted to dance last week.
I
right?
did.
So instead of sing. But here we go. So would you rather go to school all year and have 1 week off per month, or go to school every day and have summer off like we currently do?
Huh.
You can kind of like sprinkle in some other vacations and everything there because you know when you're going to be off. So what do you think?
You know what?
That's a tough one.
It's a tough one. I think I just like the summer off.
I tend to agree with that. I think that I do like our format now.
I do. What I would really like is a little bit shorter, maybe a week or so shorter for the summer, and get like a good chunk of time off right in the middle of winter.
December or February?
Either one. December, January, February. Give us a good, like a trimester.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there you go. There's the vision.
There's the vision, because if I had an extended time off, I'd be heading out west.
Colorado, there you go.
Just to go ski.
That's it. So that's our question, this week for our Would You Rather. All right, so I know last week we had mentioned it was so busy, we didn't have time to talk about what's happening in classrooms, and there are a ton of things happening in classrooms. A lot of things have already happened. Things are kind of on the docket to happen. So just to recap a few, we've had green screen trailers in first grade.
Yep.
Came out great with nonfiction books. They were amazing trailers that these students came up with. I loved them.
I love them too. And I was just filming some more this morning because we're working with an entire grade level.
Yep.
And just looking at, the kids are so excited because, they get to film something in front of a green screen, create their own backgrounds, but the connection to their writing with producing a trailer as part of their writing to really focus on, the main points of their introduction has been a great learning experience. It really made it real and authentic for them.
And they really could relate to it because we kind of, teased the whole fact and used trailers that they were aware of, with current films that they were able to do. So, yeah, they really had a good time. A lot happening with that. Now, staying with the green screen theme, we went into third grades with Persuasive, and that was great too.
That was. So, trying to convince your audience with your writing is great, but then to be able to verbalize it and then use other medium as your images to support was great. To film that all, put it in front of the green screen, curate it all in our favorite tool, Wakelet,
yep,
and then be able to share it with the community has been fantastic.
So I know we've talked a lot about now podcasts. We have Number Talk podcasts, a lot in the math realm, but we also had the opportunity where fifth graders shared their viewpoints in a research-based argument on select topics, and their conversations, whether it be on animal tricks, plastic bags, sanctuary zoos, extreme sports, like the kids, they just took ownership of it, and it blew my mind.
Well, and kudos to those teachers who really helped them organize everything. So the idea of podcasting came in, conversations because we wanted to do something different from your typical classroom debate, because we wanted to make sure all voices were heard and put it out there for comment. And we really used podcasting for that. They came up with a great design template in order to present their information in a clear, concise way where they would go point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint in a very conversational nature. And I think they achieved their goals. We did our own little app smashing with it. So we used the recordings of the podcast, and we wanted to find a platform where we can have other people comment.
Yep.
So we came up with the idea of uploading those audio files to Flipgrid and then allowing that space for further interaction.
Right. The students are able to reflect in the Flipgrid, and the best part is as we share this out with the audience as a public product, it's curated where else? In Wakelet, and now families and everybody can kind of hear the viewpoints and see what goes along with it. So a lot going on between now green screen filming and podcasts, and now we have other things on the horizon. We have first grade classrooms as part of, different ones or more of the same as well, where we've kind of just started to think of the idea with our ELA PD specialist, and we're taking green screens to a whole new level with they do restaurant reviews. So the students are going to create their restaurant review based on whatever restaurant they want in the local area, and then we say we're going to use the format of using a Yelp review.
Yeah.
That's going to be
I can't wait to design the Yelp template in Google Slides.
It's going to be great. Yelp, Google, I just can't wait. And then putting them all on one with all the classes, again, we'll probably curate it, maybe a site, but if not, definitely use Wakelet again and just be able to see all these kids' reviews of restaurants and what their experiences are. I think it's just going to be fantastic. I'm super excited about it.
And we've really reevaluated the way we're using Wakelet. So we're looking at creating these collections for buildings by grade level, so we can start showcasing all the public products that different classes and students are coming up with, because we're always looking for that authentic audience. So the beauty of Wakelet, as we've said over and over again, riding that Wakelet wave is the adaptability of it. Being able to curate so many different sources and to be able to share it with many different groups and organizations and people is just kudos to the tool. It really is user-friendly, and it is teacher and student-friendly.
Yeah, so a lot going on. Between that, we have other podcasting adventures coming up for the students. We have kindergartners that are kind of creating their own insect as well using Jamboard. We're also recording books with on fossils, right? And then the younger grade levels are able to now be immersed into those books with, not only did they use 3D pens to recreate and redesign the fossil that they were studying, but now they've also done all the research and they're tying it in with the audio components. So much going on, such good things going on in the classrooms. Am I forgetting anything? I'm sure I am.
Of course.
Yeah, as always.
But I'm forgetting as well. So.
That's it. All right, so let's talk weekly wind-up news. Before we go into our good old, one of our fan favorites, I should say, AJ Juilani, we all know that we're seeing the Wordle all over Twitter and everything like that. And it's you're laughing, but, there's a lot of people that play this. And as we try to think of how can we bring this into classroom, there's a bunch of avenues that you can go. We have one with My Wordle. .strive math, where you get to make your own custom Wordle. And again, you can also choose other languages, Spanish, French, German as well. Generate a link. You can play a random word, give this to your kids, talk about an early, quick engagement piece. Could be a vocabulary word for the week. So, definitely you can use that. There's word.rodeo, which is another one. And you get to create your own custom word puzzle, challenge your friends with them, and kind of mess with it. It could be 3 to 15 letters. And then there's this whole Canva presentation that we can share out that talks about using Wordle and how to engage your students with Wordle and Wordle-like. That's it. Anything else for that, Dan?
No, I think it's great. I have not jumped on the Wordle bandwagon yet.
No, you're on the hurdle.
But I'm on the hurdle. For those of you that don't know hurdle, check it out. Instead of words, it's music, and I'm a big fan.
It's like Name That Tune.
Right.
But in short pieces, just like Wordle. So, you got to know your music. So Dan's into that. DJ Dan over here.
Right? Living the glory days.
All right, so let's talk. There's a lot that AJ Juilani has talked about recently, and I saw something, and I thought this comic of Calvin and Hobbes was great. Did you see this one?
Yes, I have, and anything by Calvin and Hobbes is great.
True. So just to set it up with this, it says, Calvin, your mom and I looked over your report card, and we think you could be doing better. His response, but I don't like school. Why not? You like to read and you like to learn. I know you do. I mean, you've read every dinosaur book ever written. Sounds like your son.
It does.
And you've learned a lot, right? Reading and learning are fun. Yeah. So why don't you like school is the question. We don't read about dinosaurs. That's like the mic drop moment right there.
It is.
So kids still love learning, but we have to meet them with what they need to. How do we create that content? You know, the standards are going to be met, but it's what resources and content you're going to use to have the students prepared for that.
And I think that just kind of builds upon our last episode's conversation, talk about choice boards, getting in more voice and choice. I mean, you're going to assess students on content. You're going to assess student on skill. We don't always have to prescribe the way that they're definitely going to present their understanding or reach their understanding. So providing opportunities for students to find something that they're passionate about to delve into is definitely valuable. Now, it's a lot of work front-loading things for teachers.
Sure.
But I think once you start thinking big picture, things start to fall into place. It takes a lot of practice, trial and error. You will crash and burn sometimes, but you will have those moments that will really work. So, we talk about voice and choice, but another thing that just came to my mind is, start looking at Genius Hour again. Finding that opportunity in the week for students to pursue something that they're totally passionate about. So we'll remind me to put some links in the show notes about Genius Hour.
Yeah.
But I think giving that time for that student exploration of passion projects, will definitely capture that intrinsic motivation to learn for students.
Yeah, and the article also states how educators are forced into that tough spot between doing what they know works in learning, giving choice, inquiry, designing for creativity, project-based learning, and doing what they believe they have to do in order to cover the curriculum, meet the standards, and prepare kids for those standardized assessments that we know do not predict student success. So definitely think of these questions of, will this activity, lesson, assessment content keep kids loving learning? Because they do love to learn, but we have to just kind of keep that as our essential question in the back of our mind. So I want to talk about PBL. I mean, again, not as in depth as we have in the past, but I'm sure you've read this article, Dan, where we talk about PBL versus doing the same thing. The research is clear. And again, it's from AJ Juilani. And there's a lot that he said in here, where you're thinking like, okay, how are we are all doing the same things over and over again, and how do we not take that research to support our current practices, right? So here's the problem that AJ starts talking about is many educators have been asking for this shift for a long time. Some have just gone ahead and shifted on their own because they know PBL, inquiry and design thinking, puts kids in these learning situations where they can grow and achieve. And what AJ reiterates is there are too many people that want school to stay the same, even as many of us educators are shouting from the rooftops that things have to change. And I do think that coming out of the pandemic and everything, it's kind of shed a light on, like we've said, where education is going.
Mm-hmm. And, this all comes, about there's some great links in the article that you can go through. He references a professor and author, Scott McCloud, who wrote an article about this topic of doing the same thing and a lot of research in there. But the one thing that he brings up, which I think is something that I want to look into the research, is why do we never ask for the research to support our current practices? So, there's so many things where we think where people just want school to stay the same. It's something that they're familiar with, they're comfortable, and it's a model that
we've always done it
because
this way.
We've always done it this way. But those of us that are in the classrooms every day and looking at the needs of our students and everything that's happening, and as Andrew previously mentioned, lessons learned from the pandemic. Educators have realized we need to be able to adapt. We need to be able to reach more students in different ways. Provide multiple means of engagement, provide multiple means of demonstration, provide multiple means of understanding. And to do that, you really look at, how do you change your instructional design to meet the needs of more learners? And I think that the integration of technology in meaningful ways will allow for those visions of student voice, choice, PBL to be more attainable. Working in that static, classroom, that throwing it back to that blockbuster model, right?
Yep.
Where you're reliant only on the things that are in front of you at the time, really is a challenge for teachers that would want to, broaden horizons in their instructional design for their students. But, using that technology, moving over to that streaming model, will allow more flexibility for teachers. And I think it'll also ease the burden of them as they get into, presenting in this model. I think it will save them a lot of time that can then be better spent working in small groups and working with individual students.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Dan, about Genius Hour and continuing on with this conversation, the research behind PBL, Genius Hour, and choice in the classroom, which is kind of tying in everything that we've kind of touched base on over the last few weeks. Is he talks about how he experimenting with the Genius Hour in the 20% time, and how he's just fascinated by what the research has shown, that this history of the practice in education in the business world is really innovation in the classroom.
Right.
And it's really much more beneficial for the students because they're getting, and this is what parents I think really want, is they want to see these kind of learning experiences for their students instead of, always tying it to some test, some final assessment, some exam, whatever it is. But we know that the choice and inquiry-driven learning will increase student engagement and achievement, which a lot of people want to see, above us, that we're the boots on the ground. They want to see that.
Exactly. And, I just started remembering, I first got turned on to AJ Juilani probably 7, 8, 9 years ago when I first started looking at Genius Hour in the classroom. And he was one of my early resources for bringing that in. So he's definitely, I think I've grown along with some of the things he's doing right along with him. But Genius Hour is something that can definitely be incorporated in small little chunks as well in your classroom to definitely inspire your students and give Calvin, as we saw in the comic, that opportunity to pursue something that he really likes.
Yeah, and there's a whole research thing. We'll link it in the show notes. The Buck Institute for Education put it out on PBL in the 21st century competencies that states project-based learning has been shown to yield a number of benefits for students, ranging from deeper learning of academic content to stronger motivation to learn, engagement, right? Looking specifically at how the PBL supports those 21st century learning goals, we can find several promising areas, including academic achievement, the 21st century competencies, equity, motivation, and teacher satisfaction.
Right.
So, and everybody's like, well, what do I do instead of a test? Performance tasks, project-based approach.
Absolutely. And, you have those tests, and I think they're still always going to be there, and they're still going to be an important part.
Absolutely.
And I think we're always going to have some sort of standardized test.
Agreed.
But, we teach our students to be thinkers. That will help it. And the thing that, what do we do instead of tests? The standards, the skills, the content. Give them opportunities for performance assessment, to be able to demonstrate their understanding in those areas that go far beyond just a multiple choice or essay test. And I think by, coming up with rubrics, defining, or working as a group in your class to define some performance assessments together would be really valuable, and it would demonstrate much deeper levels of understanding that are connected to real-world experiences.
Right.
And, of course, authentic tasks are relevant and meaningful.
Yes. So before we go into the focus of this episode, I just want to mention, we could go on and on about AJ Juilani and PBL and everything we were just talking about. However, I want to mention GoGuardian real quick. I know we're kind of piloting it in our district. I know a lot of districts use it. But there's a great article on how to introduce GoGuardian to your students for the teachers. And, again, people are like, well, what is GoGuardian? Students may have experience with it, but it's really, something that allows you to see the platform allows you to better support all the students in the class. So we can remove distractions, check for understanding, connect with them directly in chat to check and answer questions. You can annotate their screen. There's always that one or two students in a classroom that are shy.
Right.
They don't want to ask that question. Maybe they don't understand, but then they go home and they have those questions. And if your digital space is set up, then they can ask those in that comfortable space. But if it's not, at least GoGuardian now allows you to annotate directly in front of them while they're in that one-to-one environment in the classroom. So we'll put, I mean, there's a ton of information in here, but I think it's something valuable to kind of check out as we move forward, with a lot of the schools that are going to the one-to-one environment.
Sounds good.
All right, Dan, we want to talk SAMR.
We do want to talk SAMR. I've been itching to talk about this for a while.
And we do have, of course, something from Matt Miller regarding SAMR and specifically the redefinition level. But as we talk about what is SAMR, and when we say SAMR, it's SAMR. It's the 4 levels of education, so to speak. And we can talk how they relate to Bloom's, and we can give you a graphic for that as well. But just to kind of let you know the background of it, it's substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition.
Right. So, SAMR is not something new. It's been around for a while, and there's other methods too. But basically, it's a tool for effective technology integration. So, you're looking at technology not just to do technology, but to have specific purpose for why you're choosing to use it for certain things in your classroom. The idea came by a gentleman, Dr. Ruben Puentedora, and he came.
You got that right.
I did. I've said his name many times. I'm probably still saying it wrong. But
make that a Wordle. Sorry, back on the rails. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
We've never been on the rails. But when you're looking at technology integration, you really want to have a method to decide, what am I getting out of using this technology? Is it beneficial for the student learning? And I think it really all comes down to that. So you look at this model to kind of reference your classroom design, and SAMR is the acronym. So there's 4 levels of technology integration. There's substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. So as you're looking at these different levels, it's a scale, but it doesn't mean that every part of the scale is wrong. Like if you're on some substitution things, that's okay, but you constantly want to be moving to the upper end of the scale for redefinition.
Yeah,
so
push that pebble forward.
Push that pebble forward. Take that snowball, make it into an avalanche. But substitution, where text acts as a direct tool substitute with no functional change. So that's simply, taking a worksheet that students would do on paper
making
that worksheet digital, whether making it a Google Doc where students answer it or PDF, and then students open it in a third-party application like Kami in order to do that. Right. That's a simple substitution. And you have to look at it and be like, is the technology making this a better learning experience for my student? Some cases it will be. Then you have archived digital files of all the different things, but recognizing that really there's no functional change in learning by using that substitution method.
Right. And they say between those 2 levels, so substitution and augmentation. In augmentation, tech acts as a direct tool substitute with functional improvement, like you were just mentioning, and they kind of group those together as just enhancement.
Right.
It's not making it into transformation, which is those next 2 levels.
So as we look at the next 2 levels of SAMR, the M is modification. So that's where your technology allows for significant task redesign. And then you have redefinition, where tech allows for the creation of new tasks previously inconceivable. So as we start looking at those levels, it's using that technology to make something that otherwise was either overly challenging in the classroom to pull off. It makes it more of a reality because you're able to redesign the tasks and the methods which students are learning. So one of the, you look at modification with technology, one thing that is a great example is built-in choice boards for students of using the technology to create voice and choice with the supporting resources to go along with it.
Yeah, and Matt has a whole slew of examples of 10 ways to reach SAMR's redefinition level, that highest level. So, for example, just a couple of his ideas for reaching that is a cultural exchange, between, he was a foreign language teacher, between him and a teacher in Spain, and then they can pair up, and we forget now the world is at our fingertips because of webcams and everything in almost every classroom. So you really have that global perspective, public blogs, ebooks, Twitter writing, sketchnoting, which we talked about, Nearpods, Google Apps, the paperless classroom, getting all that, in regards. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get to SAMR's redefinition level. And again, we say check out Matt's information, that he's putting out. There's a lot of bloggers out there that are sharing just good practices and ideas on how you can actually apply SAMR model and reach that highest level. The other article, which we always, want to kind of come back to is from Peachy Publications, right?
Right.
And applying SAMR model in the ELT classroom. I didn't go read this fully in depth because there was a lot of links, and then I just went down a rabbit hole like normal. But
right.
you put this in here, Dan, in our notes.
I did. And, it just kind of brings up some more examples of what modification and redefinition could look like. And it takes you through a variety of steps to do it. But, as you look through it and you think about, okay, look at all these different, things I should be striving for. You should be striving for redefinition at some point in your classroom of using technology in order to redesign the learning environment. So you're thinking about, all right, how do I get there? What kind of things do I put in place? How do I do this? And it really comes down to focusing on your digital learning space just as much as your physical learning space. So, you want to be able to use that digital space to support the space in your classroom.
Right.
And that's really where the redesign comes in, because essentially you're able to provide more opportunities for the students using technology in order to collaborate, to think critically, to move them up to various levels of Bloom's taxonomy. I mean, I'll have to bring up that graphic again, but if you look at that basic substitution augmentation level, you're not really pushing students higher up in their cognitive thought. It's a simple replacement, but by pushing them into the modification and redesign, it really is hitting on higher level thinking.
Yeah, and when you relate it to the Bloom's taxonomy, the learner and SAMR, we talk. So substitution is kind of the basic, where the learner accesses information in a different way. But as far as the Bloom's level, it's the remember, understand, and some applying, right? Mm-hmm. And then as you move up, same thing. Augmentation has some remember, understand, applying, but it's more intermediate, where the learner adds or manipulates predetermined content. So that'd be applying and analyzing. When you get to the modification and the redefinition level, you're now analyzing, evaluating, and creating, and it's the advanced, where the learner creates original content. So as SAMR is relating to the learner and Bloom's taxonomy, it's a clear image that we can share so you can kind of see the pieces and how they flow.
And when you look at the pieces and how they flow, that advanced level of Bloom's, where students are analyzing, evaluating, and creating, that's really where the redefinition of technology comes in, to allow students to have these opportunities. So, we look at previous episodes of this podcast, it's all about students being creators and not consumers.
Yep.
So if we go through the lens of what are the students creating, we're going to push that to that upper level of SAMR and those upper levels of Bloom. So the work we do with PBL, the work we're currently doing, where students are creating authentic products, that's redefining the learning space for students.
Yeah, choice boards is a great example of that as well, which we will get back to. I know we said we're going to, but we have a lot more information regarding that as well. But understanding the paradigm of SAMR can really help us as educators to kind of analyze the way we're using technology, to think about how we can evolve the way we use it, from the more superficial substitution type tasks to those ones that redefine the way the students will interact with content, each other, and the teacher. And we now know more and more districts are going to the one-to-one model, where technology is more accessible. It's not like, it's, we only have one device for every 6 students or whatnot. Those numbers have significantly decreased, where it is more accessible. And as we apply the technology and into these tasks, as we continue to evolve our teaching and good practices, we now have that at our fingertips as a resource. So if we understand the paradigm, it'll help us evolve for how our students will get the concepts they need to learn.
Exactly. So I know we're running short on time.
Yep.
And I'm going to make sure I don't get on my soapbox because Andrew's about to kick it out from underneath me. But, if you're at you can do a lot of self-reflecting and see where you are in that SAMR model. And if you find that you're in the substitution and augmentation, that's not a bad thing. I mean, I don't want anyone to feel like, I'm here, I'm never going to be there. It's something just to be aware of. And as you start integrating those tools, how is it going to impact the learning? And just seriously think about that. Like, so if you're doing a straight substitution, is it really better to have students open up a PDF file on a computer and annotate it with a third-party thing? I mean, am I getting any instructional benefit out of that? And if you are, maybe you should stick with it. If you're not, well, maybe that substitution isn't quite worth it at that point, because it might be too time-consuming and you're not getting to what you really need to for your students by that substitution.
Right. So I think we're going to wrap up, as you mentioned. Before we do so, I've been forgetting the last couple weeks, and Dan's going to be like, oh, yeah, that's right. Swag. So if you want a sticker, if you want a sticker, right, there's going to be a form to fill out, and you can let us know where to send your sticker, and we will send you an Adventures in Tech sticker. Since you're a supportive listener.
Is it the fancy ones?
Well, we have a bunch of them. Maybe we'll do some raffles for some keychains as we wrap up season 1. Because we do have some of those as well. But stickers first. We'll get the stickers out. Everybody loves a sticker, right? Who doesn't love a sticker? Our computers are covered with stickers.
I love stickers.
Yeah. So we will we'll send that'll be in the show notes, the Google form to fill out, and we can definitely send you a Adventures in Tech podcast sticker that you can slap wherever you need to.
We might need some badges too.
Yeah, we can do. Well, we've talked about that. Stay tuned for that. All right. So we're going to wrap up episode number 17 of the Adventures in Tech podcast. Of course, as always, once again, thank you for all your support, listening on all the platforms, leaving us those reviews, and sharing it with everybody. This has been great, where we've seen people all over the world checking out the podcast. And, of course, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, please reach out. Tech hard, work smart, live in adventure.
Find Andrew on all socials at A Nicola Tech and Dan at WCSD Tech DR.